The last toast was still burning in Vivian Darkhollow's throat when the chains snapped tight and jerked her off the dais. A moment earlier, she had been standing beneath carved antlers and treaty banners, painted in ceremonial white from throat to wrist, accepting stale blessings as bride of peace between Darkhollow and Nightfang. Now her goblet shattered across black stone, red wine and candle wax splashing like blood at her feet as two Nightfang wardens hauled her through the emptied feast hall. The gold links at her wrists bit skin already rubbed raw. Silver filings had been worked into the inner cuffs, and every movement sent a hot, needling pain up her forearms and into her shoulders. "Wait, what are you doing?" she demanded, heels skidding over wet rushes. "Where is Elder Marrow? Where is your alpha?" No one answered. Heads turned, then turned away. Servants flattened against walls. A pair of young wolves she had met only an hour before made ward signs over their chests as she passed, as if she were already a ghost. The doors opened to storm wind and slate sky. Rain knifed sideways across the courtyard, soaking her ceremonial silks in seconds. The wardens dragged her beyond the torchline, down the path where old standing stones marked Nightfang's border, each stone carved with crescent runes and battle names. Between two of them stood Tobias Stoneheart in a dry cloak, hood thrown back, looking precisely as he had looked as a boy whenever he won a game by cheating and dared anyone to prove it. Her cousin smiled. "Let her stand," he said. The wardens released her hard enough that she staggered to one knee. Mud swallowed her hem. The chain at her ankles clanged over stone. "What is this?" Vivian asked, breath ragged. "Tobias." He crouched so his face was level with hers. Rain purled on his lashes, never seeming to touch him. "This is administration." Behind him, three Nightfang council elders formed a line. Elder Marrow, lean and hawk-nosed. Old Nessa with her iron cane. Cade of the split ear, gaze fixed somewhere over Vivian's shoulder. None met her eyes. Marrow cleared his throat. Vivian Darkhollow, daughter of House Darkhollow by blood, delivered under Treaty Article 7 as guarantee of peace. "Bride," she cut in. "I was delivered as bride." Marrow did not pause. "Under dispute of terms after evidence brought by heir Tobias Stoneheart, this council renders immediate protective exile. You are to leave Nightfang territory at once. You have 1 hour from this moment to clear the border ridge." The storm seemed to go silent around her. "What evidence?" she whispered. "Protective exile from what?" Tobias answered for them, pleasant as polished steel. "From you, cousin. Fortunately for everyone, we discovered you were never meant to be wife. Only collateral. A breathing signature. I paid my dues, gave Nightfang what they required, and now I inherit Darkhollow lands uncontested." Vivian stared at him, not understanding, then understanding all at once and wishing she hadn't. Her father's sudden fever 2 months ago, the sealed meetings she had been excluded from, Tobias insisting she wear the old ceremonial chains for tradition, her father's ring missing from his hand before the pyre cooled. "You sold me," she said. He gave a tiny shrug. "Such an ugly word. I negotiated stability." Nessa's cane struck stone once. "Girl, listen carefully. We cannot absorb Darkhollow succession disputes. If you remain, Tobias claims Nightfang shelters a claimant and civil war begins tonight. Leave now, and perhaps bloodshed is delayed." "Delayed for whom?" Vivian snapped. "He murdered my father." Cade finally looked at her then, eyes flat. "Accusations without witness are wind. I am witness." "You are interested party," Marrow said, "and now potential spy." The word hit harder than the chains. Spy meant lawful hunt. No trial, no challenge, no burial rights if caught inside foreign borders. Tobias stood and brushed rain from his cuff. "Don't glare at them, Vivian. They're being generous. 1 hour is more than I advised." He leaned close enough that she smelled clove oil on his breath. I've already sent trackers from our side. Loyal men. They'll make sure you don't wander back to tell stories. Her wolf surged in panic, claws scraping behind her ribs. Where is Alara? She demanded, grabbing his sleeve despite the pain. Where is my sister? His smile thinned. Safe, if she keeps her head down and learns from your mistakes. He nodded to the wardens. One step behind her, unlocked the ceremonial collar at her throat, and ripped it off with enough force to tear skin. Warm blood slid under her necklace and into her bodice. Then they unlocked the wrist chains, only to snap on rough iron travel shackles scored inside with bitter paste. Wolfsbane, crushed and packed where metal kissed flesh. A slow poison if left untreated. Marrow lifted a bronze time bell and rang it once. The note shivered across the stones. 1 hour, he repeated. When the ridge bell sounds again, any wolf finding you within Nightfang lines may kill on sight. Vivienne pushed herself upright, shaking. Rain plastered her dark hair to her face, salt and blood in her mouth. She searched the council one last time for a crack. Pity, hesitation, anything human. Found none. Tobias stepped back under his hood. Run quickly, cousin. I'd hate for your final duty to be inconvenient. The wardens opened the boundary gate. Beyond it, pine forest pitched downward into blackness, branches whipping in storm wind like raised lashes. Vivienne crossed the line because the alternative was dying at her cousin's feet while he watched. For the first 2 minutes she walked, because rage held her spine straight and she refused to give Tobias the satisfaction of seeing her scramble. At minute 3, thunder split above the ridge and she heard a hunting horn far behind her. One long note, then 2 short. Not Nightfang, Dark Hollow field signal, trackers. She ran. The forest swallowed torchlight almost immediately. Needles and rain turned the ground to slick paste. Her white treaty dress flashed between trunks like a target banner, so she tore the overskirt free, then the pearl veil, dropping both into a bramble thicket. Branches clawed her arms bare, the iron shackles slammed against bone. Each impact drove Wolfsbane deeper into skin, hot cold, until her fingers began to numb. Think, she ordered herself. Don't panic. Count. Minute 6. Keep to stone where possible. Leave less scent in mud. Minute 9. Cross running water. Minute 12. Don't shift. Not with silver in your blood. It would rip you apart halfway through. Behind her, horn calls answered one another, closer now, muffled by rain. She veered downslope toward the sound of rushing water and slid 20 feet on her hip through ferns and scree, smashing into a fallen pine. Pain burst white behind her eyes. She bit her tongue and tasted iron, pushed up, kept moving. By minute 15, she reached a creek turned savage by storm. She stumbled in, water to her thighs, current punching at her knees. She forced herself upstream instead of across, teeth chattering, because trackers expected prey to take the shortest line. She walked in water until her calves cramped, then scrambled out over a shelf of basalt. Minute 22. Breath tearing. Vision narrowing at the edges. She ripped one shackle against rock, tried to break the hinge. It held. Skin did not. Blood mixed with rain and ran down her palms. Voices drifted through trees behind her. Male, laughing, not hurried. They knew the terrain. Knew she was already fading. Left fork, one shouted. She's bleeding silver sour, easy trail. Vivienne ducked under spruce boughs and forced herself into the darkest ravine she could find. A memory rose unbidden, Tobias at 16, pushing her face into training dirt while their uncle called it discipline. Don't waste breath crying, Vivi. Breathe for running. Minute 27. She almost vomited from dizziness. Wolfsbane was climbing her arms now, sharp pins under the skin. Fever heat licked the back of her neck despite the cold rain. Minute 31. She heard paw steps where there should have been none. One of them had shifted. You can't outrun us, a voice called, too close. He said bring your tongue if nothing else. Keep it in a jar. She almost stopped then. Not from fear, from the sudden, crushing exhaustion of being hunted by men who had eaten at her father's table. Men she had sewn winter cloaks for when she was 14. Men Tobias had bought as easily as he had sold her. No. She grabbed a fist-sized stone and hurled it downslope to the right. It cracked branches, drew curses. She veered left and climbed. Roots tore under her hands. Mud sucked at her knees. Lightning strobed overhead, illuminating ridge markers carved with wolf skulls and crescent moons. Deeper night fang interior. Wrong direction? No, the border curled here. If she could clear the next rise, she might hit neutral game roads used by patrol convoys. Minute 36. Horn again, nearer, triumphant. Minute 38. The forest opened abruptly onto a narrow logging track rutted with old wheels. She staggered into it and froze. Headlights knifed through rain from around the bend below. Too many, too bright, moving fast in tight formation. Engines growled low and heavy, not Dark Hollow horse teams. Black armored transports, matte-painted crest plates obscured by mud. At their center rode a single motorcycle, longer frame, predatory lines, rider in a dark gray coat that snapped behind him like wings. War convoy. Vivian spun to run back into the trees. Her knee buckled. She hit gravel and skidded, palms shredding. The lead bike braked hard in front of her, spray fanning over her face. Boots hit ground. Someone was on her before she could crawl, one gloved hand closing around her forearm with controlled force. Not cruel, steadying her as her body shook itself apart. Easy, a deep voice said above the storm. You're bleeding. The touch struck like lightning under her skin. Silver heat lashed from the base of her spine to her throat. Violent enough, she gasped. Her wolf slammed forward, not in fear this time, but with a starving, aching recognition that made her bones feel too small. The world sharpened. The rain's metallic scent, engine oil, smoke, and beneath it all the impossible scent of him. Cedar, cold iron, and moonlit stone after fire. She looked up. A scar cut across the man's jaw and vanished under his collar. Old and pale, but now lit faintly from within, lunar sheen threading the edges. His face was harder than rumor had prepared her for, all blunt angles and old violence held on a leash. His eyes were gray until they met hers. Then his pupils blew wide, swallowing color. Someone in the convoy whispered, disbelieving, "That can't be. Starfall's dead." The rider's grip tightened once, involuntary. When he spoke again, iron control fractured into a rasp so raw it sounded torn from the center of him. Mine. Behind them, from the tree line, a tracker's howl rose and cut off mid-note. Behind them, from the tree line, a tracker's howl rose and cut off mid-note. A dark shape dropped from a pine branch with a wet thud. One of the convoy outriders landed beside it, blade already clean, and gave a sharp hand signal into the rain. "Perimeter breach neutralized," he called. Vivian barely heard him. The gloved hand still around her forearm was the only solid thing in a world suddenly gone strange and tilted. Heat kept climbing through her, not fever-hot like wolfsbane, but molten and bright, threading through marrow, dragging every nerve awake. Her wolf, half sick and half mad moments ago, was now pressed hard against her skin, pacing and whining with an almost painful urgency. "Mine," it echoed, not in words, but in instinct. "Home, home, home." No. Panic snapped through her so fast she tasted copper. She tried to wrench free, but her arm refused her, whether from poison or from the pull in that grip she couldn't tell. The scarred rider crouched in front of her, rain running off the edge of his jaw. Up close, he looked even less like rumor and more like a battlefield carved into flesh. Old knife line at his mouth, puckered burn near his left temple. White crescent scar over his throat, where someone had once tried to open him to the spine. His eyes were still fixed on hers as if looking away might tear something vital loose. Then his irises flashed. Not fully gold, just a sudden molten ring at the center, bright as struck metal, gone almost before she could trust she'd seen it. He drew a breath through his teeth, sharp and involuntary, like a man hit in the gut. "Tell me your name," he said, voice rougher now, dragged over stone. She should have lied. She knew she should have lied. "Vivienne," she heard herself say. "Vivienne Darkhollow." A muscle in his cheek jumped. "Darkhollow," he repeated, and there was recognition there, and fury, and something far more dangerous. Behind him, boots pounded. Two wolves in black convoy leathers formed up at his back, one with a rifle raised toward the trees. "Your Majesty," the rifleman said tightly, "we need to move. We've got at least 4 cents in the ravine, maybe more." "Your Majesty." The title cracked through her haze. She stared at the scarred man again, searching memory and gossip and old war songs. The black standard broken at Ashfall Pass. The king dragged under bodies and never recovered. The throne left to regents and jackals. Bastion Starfall. Dead for 3 years, according to everyone. He did not look dead. He looked terrifyingly alive. Another shout came from the trees. "There, on the road!" The rifle barked. Something yelped. Tires squealed as one of the transports swung sideways to block the track. Men moved with drilled precision, not panicked, not hurried. Wolves who had done this in worse places and survived. Bastion never looked away from her. "Can you stand?" he asked. Her laugh came out brittle. "Can I stand? I was exiled 40 minutes ago with wolfsbane in my blood and Darkhollow trackers at my heels." His gaze dropped to her wrists. In the headlight glare, the scored iron showed clearly, paste smeared where rain had only half washed it. His expression changed. Not softer, exactly, but colder in a way that felt like the temperature dropping before a kill. "Who chained you like that?" She swallowed. "My cousin, Tobias Stoneheart." That name landed like a spark in dry kindling. The men behind him went still. Bastion's thumb brushed, almost accidentally, over the inside of her wrist where the shackle had bitten deepest. Silver fire snapped up her arm so hard she gasped again, and he hissed under his breath as if he'd felt it too. He removed his hand instantly. The discipline in that single movement shocked her more than the heat had. He could have dragged her up, could have claimed, commanded, ordered. Instead, he shifted back half a step, palms open where she could see them. "Vivienne," he said, deliberate now, forcing steadiness into each word. "Your 1 hour is void. By crown law, this convoy is sovereign passage. Anyone hunting you now hunts under my banner." "I don't care about your banner," she snapped, then flinched at her own voice. "I care about living through the next 10 minutes. Then live them with me." A bolt of lightning split the ridge. In its glare, she saw movement to the left, 2 Darkhollow shapes breaking from cover. One already half-shifted. Muzzle long, shoulders broad. Instinct made her curl in on herself. Bastion moved in front of her before the first attacker hit the road. It happened too fast for thought. A blur of black coat and bared teeth. The crack of impact. A scream cut short. The half-shifted tracker flew sideways into a transport wheel well hard enough to crumple. The second one raised a crossbow. An outrider took him at the knees. The bolt snapped harmlessly into gravel. "Alive if possible," Bastion said without turning. "I want names." He said it like a king giving weather instructions. Hands reached for Vivienne from both sides, his guards, trying to get her to safety. She recoiled violently, wolf snarling under her skin. Every touch hurt. Every scent was wrong except one. "Don't," she rasped. Bastion's head snapped around. "Off her." The guards dropped their hands at once. He extended his arm again, slower this time, giving her every chance to refuse. Rain sheeted between them. Her own heartbeat was so loud it drowned engines and gunfire and thunder. Her wolf pushed toward him with aching certainty, her mind shoved back with equal force. He's a king. Kings use people. He is your mate. She hated that second thought, hated how badly she wanted it to be true. Permission, he said quietly, as if hearing the war inside her. May I move you? No male had asked her that since she was 12. She gave one tight nod. He lifted her, efficiently, carefully, one arm under her knees, the other behind her shoulders, avoiding the shackles. The contact still blazed, but now there was structure to it, not just wildfire. She could breathe around it, barely. As he carried her toward the lead transport, she forced herself to keep her eyes open, to memorize. The crest under the mud on the door panel was a broken star over a fang. Starfall's old sigil, altered for war. So the stories had been wrong. He had not died. He had been building. Inside the transport was steel benches, medkits, weapon racks, the smell of gun oil and wet wool. Bastian set her down and knelt to the floor in front of her, putting himself lower, even while shouting orders out the open door. Pull in scouts, sweep the ravine. No Nightfang patrol touches this scene without my mark. Yes, sire. He looked back at her. Stay with me. Easy command, she muttered through chattering teeth. I can't feel my fingers. His jaw clenched. He took a small metal flask from his belt and uncapped it, sniffed it once, then handed it to her instead of tipping it to her lips. Again that restraint. Willow bark and salt, he said. Not enough to fight wolfsbane, but it'll keep your heart steady until we get moonleaf in you. She drank. Bitter. Warm. Her vision steadied by a fraction. He watched to make sure she swallowed, then stripped off one glove with his teeth and pressed 2 fingers lightly to the pulse at her throat. Heat surged at the contact. His pupils widened again. Locked there, eye to eye, she saw the same shock in him that lived in her, terror wearing the face of hunger. You feel it, she whispered. His mouth flattened. Yes. What if I don't want this? Then you will not be forced. The answer came too fast to be rehearsed. Not by me, not by bond, not by law. Outside, someone yelled all clear. Doors slammed, engines rose. Bastian stood and banged once on the cab wall. The convoy lurched forward, turning away from the kill zone and into deeper Nightfang territory. Vivian gripped the bench as pain climbed her arms in hot spikes. Where are you taking me? My fortress. She gave him a hard, disbelieving look. Your prison, you mean? For the first time, something like bleak humor touched his face. If I wanted a prisoner, I'd use chains that weren't already killing her. The words should have comforted her. Instead, they landed in the center of everything she no longer trusted: men, treaties, fate itself. Still, when the transport hit a rut and she pitched sideways, it was his hand she caught. By the time they reached Starfall Hold, night had thickened to ink. The fortress rose out of the mountainside like a black tooth, all slate walls and iron galleries, torches burning blue along the battlements against the rain. Wolves moved everywhere, guards on the parapets, runners in the yards, medics with satchels. The gates opened before the convoy fully stopped. Vivian tried to stand on her own when the doors swung out. Her knees folded immediately. Bastian was there, not catching so much as bracing, letting her choose whether to lean. She hated that she did. Inside, the heat of braziers hit her damp skin and set her shivering harder. Her wrists were swollen now, angry red around the iron, streaks climbing toward her elbows like ink in water. Wolfsbane. Fast. A healer in gray approached with 2 assistants and a tray of instruments. Her eyes flicked to Vivian's throat, then to Bastian's face, reading what had happened in one glance. Majesty, we need to sedate her before extraction. If she shifts with silver contamination... No sedation, Bastian said. Then bind her. No bindings. The healer hesitated. Sire, with respect, if she is what I think she is, and unbonded. His voice dropped a degree. I said no. The woman bowed stiffly and withdrew, assistance in tow. Vivian stared at him through fever blur. Why refuse treatment? I refused their restraints. He guided her into a side chamber. Small, stone-walled, one narrow cot near the hearth. Not a cell. No bars. I'll treat the wounds myself. You're a king, not a medic. I was a field captain before I was either. He knelt and set a basin on the floor, steam rising from water scented with crushed moonleaf and cedar ash. He brought shears, clean cloth, a jar of green-black salve. His movements were practiced, economical. She sat on the cot only because her legs failed her again. May I? He asked, fingers hovering near the shackle. The question disoriented her more than the poison. She nodded once. He picked the lock with a thin steel pin. The iron cuff sprang open. Blood rushed back into her hand in a burst of needles so sharp she cried out. He did not flinch, only slid the second cuff free and laid both shackles on the floor as if discarding something obscene. Up close, her wrists looked flayed. Tiny silver shards glittered where they had embedded in torn skin. He soaked a cloth and began cleaning, careful as if handling blown glass. When she jerked, he stopped immediately. Too much? Burns, she whispered. Moonleaf draws poison. It will burn before it cools. His voice changed as he worked, lower, rhythmical. At first she thought he was counting. Then she recognized old words in a dialect used by frontline wolves. Battlefield prayers to keep hands steady and hearts from breaking open. Guide the blood to stay, he murmured. Guide the breath to return. Let pain pass through, not root. She closed her eyes despite herself. No one had prayed over her in years. Why are you doing this? She asked after a while, because the silence between those murmured lines felt too intimate. You could have handed me to your council and gained favor by dawn. I don't require their favor. Everyone requires something. A pause. Cloth twisting in the basin. I require sleep. I require competent quartermasters. I do not require my mate to bleed out to prove I can command a room. The word mate struck both of them quiet. When he reached for a deeper cut near her inner wrist, she recoiled reflexively, shoulders hitting stone. Not from him, from memory. Tobias. Chains. Hands that never asked. Bastian set the cloth down at once and leaned back, giving her space. I won't touch you again without permission, he said. No irritation, no wounded pride, just an oath spoken plain. He unclasped his own cloak and set it over her shoulders, heavy wool still warm from his body, then rose and moved to the far side of the room, near the door, where she could see him and breathe without his scent pressing close. I'll stay there, he said, reading her tension. If fever spikes, tell me. If you want me gone, say so. She clutched the cloak tighter with shaking fingers. You expect me to trust that? No, he said. I expect you to test it. The fire cracked softly. Rain ticked at the arrow-slit window. After several minutes, when the pain in her wrists dulled from knives to embers, she whispered, Finish the bandage. He waited a heartbeat, making sure she meant it, then returned and completed the wraps, each pass snug but not constricting, his knuckles rough and scarred and infinitely careful. By the time fever finally dragged her under, Bastian was still in the chair by the door, awake, watching the dark hall beyond as if daring anyone to cross it. Dawn came thin and iron-gray through the slit window, carrying the sound of raised voices. Vivienne woke to the taste of metal and smoke. Her wrists throbbed, but the poison lines had receded to faint shadows. Bastian stood at the washstand, buckling his bracers, coat off, shirt sleeves rolled. Fresh water steamed in a kettle. He looked as if he hadn't slept at all. A knock, then no wait for answer. Elder Marrow pushed in, Nessa behind him with her cane, Cade at her shoulder, and 3 armed betas crowding the threshold. So the council had found her. Marrow's gaze swept the room, landed on Vivian sitting up with Bastion's cloak around her, and tightened. Majesty, we requested audience in the council chamber. You have it now, Bastion said. Nessa tapped her cane once. The girl remains a diplomatic hazard. Dark Hollow riders are already at our lower gates demanding surrender of the spy. Until jurisdiction is settled, she must be confined. Silver manacles, guard rotation. Vivian's stomach dropped. She forced her spine straight. I am not your prisoner. Cade's mouth twisted. You are whatever keeps this territory from war. One of the betas, broad-shouldered and young, looked her over with open disdain. She brought war in white silk, white. Chain her before she mates the king and claims the throne by scent. The room went still. Bastion stepped between them and her in one smooth movement, all warmth gone from his face. Say that again, he said. The beta lifted his chin, emboldened by the elders at his back. I said she should be collared for public safety. Bastion unfastened the top clasp of his shirt and pulled the fabric aside, baring his throat, the scarred, vulnerable line of it, to the room. It was an old challenge gesture, formal, deadly, an alpha offering his throat meant, dispute me, and it is blood law. Marrow inhaled sharply. Nessa swore under her breath. Any hand raised against her, Bastion said, voice carrying like a blade laid on stone, is a hand raised against your alpha. The hot-headed beta lunged anyway. He never reached her. Bastion caught his wrist, pivoted, and put him on the floor in 2 breaths, face to stone, arm pinned behind his back at a screaming angle, knee planted between his shoulders. The beta snarled and tried to shift. Bastion pressed down until the sound broke into a choke. She stands under my protection, Bastion said, not loud, somehow worse for it. He looked up at the elders while holding their fighter immobile. Or you stand outside my pack. No one moved. Cade's jaw worked. Marrow looked suddenly very old. Nessa rapped her cane once, hard, and the 2 other betas dragged their pinned comrade back when Bastion released him. The young wolf stumbled upright, humiliated, eyes bright with hate. He did not meet Bastion's gaze again. Marrow bowed stiffly. Your will is heard, Majesty. Then hear the rest, Bastion said. Vivian Darkhollow is guest right under Crown Seal until I say otherwise. Any attempt to bind, poison, or remove her without my consent is treason. Carry that to the gates and to every barracks before rumor outruns law. Nessa's eyes cut to Vivian. Not kind, not cruel. Measuring. And if Darkhollow demands trial? Then they can demand it in daylight with witnesses, not with knives in rain. The elders withdrew, taking tension with them like a receding tide. The door shut. Silence rang. Bastion refastened his shirt, hiding his throat scar, and turned toward her. Whatever had been alpha iron a moment ago eased back into something she couldn't yet name. Are you hurt? He asked. She almost laughed at the absurdity. He had just threatened his own counsel for her, and he was asking if she was hurt. No, she said. Then, after a beat, thank you. His gaze flicked to her bandaged wrists, then back to her face. You don't owe gratitude for basic protection. Maybe not, she said softly. But I notice it anyway. He crossed halfway, then stopped, giving her the choice of the last distance. After a long second, Vivian moved first, just enough to close that space, and let her fingers rest, light and deliberate, on his forearm. Permission. His breath caught, barely audible. Her guard did not fall all at once. It lowered by inches, like a blade set down within reach instead of thrown away. But it lowered. And for now, that was more trust than she had given anyone since the border stones. Her fingers on his forearm had barely settled when a horn sounded in the inner ward. 3 clipped blasts. Pause, then 3 more. Emergency council call. Bastion's expression hardened. Stay here. Vivian's hand tightened before she could stop herself. If this is about me, I'm not hiding in your room while strangers decide my life. A beat. He looked at her fingers still on him, then at her face. Then you stand at my right, he said. And you speak when spoken to. The war chamber sat below the main keep, circular and windowless, lit by iron braziers and a map table carved with river lines and border stones. By the time they entered, half the Nightfang leadership was already there. Marrow and Nessa, Cade, 2 captains from the Eastern Watch, a clerk with ink-stained thumbs, and 3 messengers still dripping road mud. The room went quiet when Vivian walked in wearing Bastion's cloak. Not a single one of them missed it. A dark hollow courier lay on a stretcher near the far wall, his body mutilated beyond any doubt of intent. His satchel had been slit and re-sewn with red thread. Deliberate. Mocking. Read it, Bastion said to the clerk. The clerk swallowed and unfolded a bundle of parchment stamped with dark hollow wax. Wolfhead seal, black lacquer, Tobias's signet score across the jawline. He read, voice shaking at first, then steadier. To the gathered alphas of Holleridge and all packs bound by Moonlaw. Let it be known that Vivian Darkhollow conspired with Nightfang agents in the poisoning of High Alpha Corvin Darkhollow. Let it be known she entered Nightfang under false bridal claims as part of an assassination exchange, and that Alpha King Bastion Starfall harbors her now to breed a rival bloodline under forged peace. We petition immediate sanction, purge of traitor claimant and unlawful sheltering king before bond rights can legitimize rebellion. The word purge seemed to suck heat from the room. Vivian went very still. Corvin. Her father's name in Tobias's mouth like a legal tool. Forgery, she said flatly. Cade gave a humorless huff. Every liar calls forgery. The clerk lifted the second sheet. There are attachments. He spread them on the table. 4 letters in Vivian's hand, or what looked like it. Requests for nightshade doses. Names of supposed Nightfang contacts. A note arranging her father's guard rotation 2 days before his fever took him. Her signature at the bottom of each. She crossed the room and snatched one up, pulse hammering. The flourish on the V was hers. The pressure marks? Wrong. The spacing between Darkhollow and old family names? Wrong. Tobias had copied her script but not her habits. I never wrote these. Her voice cut sharp enough that even Cade blinked. He stole old correspondence and mirrored the hand. Look at the consonant joins. These are court scribe joins, not mine. Marrow leaned in despite himself. Nessa took the page from her and examined it with narrowed eyes. Bastion didn't touch the letters. He watched faces. Who carries this petition? He asked. Riders to Greyfen, Redclaw, and Southmere already departed before dawn, said the mud-soaked messenger. More at noon. Tobias is calling tribunal at full moon on Darkhollow border ground. Full moon is 4 nights, Marrow said. 3, Vivian corrected. If he's counting by old Darkhollow rite. Silence again. The old rite was blood law, fast, violent, public. Bastion's voice dropped. What else? The messenger hesitated, then reached into his jacket and produced a charcoal rubbing wrapped in oilskin. He laid it on the table. A carved tablet text in archaic lunar script, half worn away, one line darkened in fresh ink. Nessa swore outright. Marrow read under his breath, then louder, unwillingly. When the Starfall King takes his destined mate, her blood upon the border altar shall either crown him in moonfire, or unmake his throne in madness. A collective intake of breath moved around the chamber. Vivian felt Bastion's body go rigid beside her, not with surprise, with recognition. So he knew this prophecy. Of course he knew. Cade looked from the rubbing to Vivian with open suspicion. Convenient. A hunted claimant appears. You two scent match in the same hour? And now prophecy text surfaces? Stolen text, Vivian snapped. From Dark Hollow vaults. My father kept the original under bloodlock. Tobias can't invoke it lawfully unless he has your blood, Nessa finished. The brazier popped. Someone shifted a foot. No one liked where this was heading. Bastion planted both hands on the map table. He forges murder charges to isolate her, rallies packs with purge language, then brandishes a prophecy that turns my mate into a political trigger. He's not trying for justice. He's trying to stage legitimacy with spectacle. And if he spills her blood on that altar? Marrow asked. Bastion's gaze was winter. Then he starts a war he can narrate before truth can catch it. Vivian met Marrow's eyes. That is who my cousin is. Not impulsive, not stupid, patient. He'll bait both sides into moving first and claim defense. Nessa tapped the prophecy rubbing. Dangerous enough, but dangerous men still need steel. How much of Dark Hollow follows him? The messenger answered in a whisper. Half the warbands, maybe more. He paid arrears from the treasury and promised land from Trader Holdings. Vivian closed her eyes for one hard second. He was buying loyalty with her inheritance and her father's corpse. When she opened them, Bastion was watching her, not pitying, just present. He gave orders rapid and precise. Riders to intercept petitions, scribes to verify seal fraud, scouts to track Tobias's altar movements. Gate command doubled. No lone patrols. Then he turned to the room. Until this is broken in open witness, Vivian remains under crown protection. Any pack challenging that can do it to my face. Cade bristled. And if half the valley comes with spears? Then half the valley learns arithmetic, Bastion said. No one argued after that. But as the chamber emptied, whispers followed them anyway. Traitor, mate, prophecy, purge, threads tightening into a net. Tobias had not merely accused her. He had set the valley on fire and handed everyone a reason to call it law. By midday, Starfall Hold sounded like a struck anvil. Smithies ran without pause, hammering silver-edged restraints for prisoners and plain iron for everyone else. Runners flew between towers with coated ribbons. In the lower yard, Nightfang wolves drilled shield rotations under sleet, while scouts came and went in mud-streaked waves. Above all of it hung tension sharp as static. Vivian stood on the western gallery with a spyglass, counting banners on the lower road. 3 Grayfin standards by noon, she said. He moved faster than we did. Bastion stood behind and to her left, close enough she could feel his heat through wool, not touching. Grayfin likes whichever side looks inevitable. She lowered the glass. Then we make him look mortal. His mouth twitched. Working on it. Growing attraction, she discovered, did not arrive as softness. It arrived in jagged, inconvenient moments. The way his voice changed when he gave her information instead of orders. The way his attention never wandered when she spoke strategy. The way her body calmed when he entered a room, even while her mind yelled at it for treason. Fear came with it. Equal weight. At second bell, they met with scribes to draft rebuttals to Tobias's letters. At third bell, a border scout staggered in with an arrow through his shoulder and reported 2 Nightfang grain caravans torched near Hollow Creek, attackers wearing Dark Hollow cloaks, speaking with Red Claw accents. False flag. More fuel on Tobias's fire. At fourth bell, an assassin tried to enter disguised as a priest bearing cleansing rites for the poisoned bride. He had silver wire hidden in prayer beads and Vivian's childhood nickname on his tongue. She heard the struggle in the corridor before she saw it. By the time she reached the stair landing, guards had him pinned, jaw broken, blood on the stone. He grinned anyway when he saw her. Tobias sends his love, little Vivi. Bastian hit him once, open-handed, hard enough to bounce his skull off flagstone. "You don't speak her name?" The man spat teeth and laughed until they dragged him to the cells. That night the council pressed harder. Marrow requested, politely this time, that Vivian sign a temporary renunciation of Dark Hollow claim to cool hostilities. Cade suggested she be moved to a hidden safe house for everyone's protection. Nessa said nothing for a long minute, then asked Vivian directly, "If this becomes open war, can you command any Dark Hollow loyalists still?" Vivian thought of old captains who had taught her to ride, of stewards loyal to her father, now likely watched, of Alara, somewhere inside Tobias's grip. "Some," she said, "if they hear my voice before he buries it." Bastian's eyes met hers over the table. Decision flashed there. "We record a statement tonight," he said. "Seal verified by 3 witnesses, sent by Raven and Ryder before dawn." Cade scoffed. "You think words beat blood?" Bastian didn't look at him. Truth beats timing only if it moves. Pressure mounted from all sides: law, rumor, hunger for certainty. Vivian felt it physically, a hand between her shoulder blades pushing her toward any simple answer: submit, flee, disappear. Instead, she stood in war maps until ink stained her fingers and her bandaged wrists throbbed. She corrected route lines where Tobias would stage ambushes. She listed elders still bound by her father's debts. She did not shatter, though several times she wanted to. At dusk, as they left the map room, her knees buckled on the stair from sheer fatigue and lingering poison. Bastian caught her elbow, light, immediately easing when she stiffened. "Sit." "I'm fine." "You're vertical. Different condition." "I don't need coddling." A pause. "Good. I have none to spare." She glared at him. Then, because he looked infuriatingly calm, she laughed, a short, frayed sound that startled them both. He exhaled, some tension leaving his shoulders. "Come on," he said quietly. 10 minutes. Then we go back to saving the valley from your cousin's ego." She should have refused. Instead, she let him lead her away from the noise to a narrow passage above the old armory where wind hummed through arrow slits, and no one came unless ordered. 10 minutes became longer. The passage opened onto a small roof court sheltered by broken battlements, half forgotten by the keep. Rain had thinned to mist. Beyond the wall, the mountains were dark ink against a bruised sky, and somewhere below wolves were changing watch, voices carrying in low calls. Bastian set 2 cups on the stone between them. Not wine. Hot broth, oversalted, practical. Vivian wrapped both hands around the cup for heat. "Is this where kings hide from councils?" "This is where captains hide from kings," he said. "I learned the route years ago." She studied him in profile. Without command posture, he looked older. Not in years. In wear. Scars silvered his throat and jaw in the moonlight, map lines of survived decisions. "What happened at Ashfall?" she asked before she could edit herself. His gaze stayed on the mountains. "I died in all the useful ways, not the permanent one." "That's not an answer." "No." He drank, then set the cup down untouched after one swallow. "My own regent sold troop routes for gold. We were boxed in at the pass. I took 30 wolves out through the burn tunnels, came back to find my death already announced and my throne conveniently managed." "And you let them think you were dead?" "I let enemies stand in daylight where I could count them." She absorbed that. "How many did you lose?" His jaw flexed once. "Enough to know exactly what a forged letter can cost." Silence settled, not awkward. The kind that allowed breathing. She stared at steam curling from her cup. "When my father got sick, I thought it was grief making him fade. My mother died in winter, and he never really came back from that. Tobias said the fever was old age, said I should stop asking questions and learn ceremony." Her voice roughened. I washed my father's hands for burial. His nails were blue at the beds. Not fever blue. Poison blue. I knew it and did nothing because I had no proof. Bastian turned toward her fully now. You survived inside a court built to doubt you. That is not nothing. It feels like nothing when he wears our name and people bow. He bought those bows. They're rented, not earned. She huffed a humorless laugh. You always sound so certain. No. He shook his head. I sound certain when others need it. Different craft. The admission landed softly, more intimate than touch. Wind lifted her hair. She tucked it back and caught him watching the movement, restrained hunger flashing and banked. The bond between them pulsed. Faint now, steadier than that first violent flare, like a thread pulled taut but not yanked. I'm afraid of it, she said, surprising herself again. Not you. This. She touched 2 fingers lightly to her sternum. I spent years being traded, promised, positioned. If I let this bond decide for me, what am I except another bargain? Bastian was still for a long moment. Then he held out his hand, palm up, midway between them. Not taking. Offering. This decides nothing without choice, he said. I can feel you in my blood and still keep my hands to myself. I can want and wait. If all you ever give me is alliance, I will keep faith with that. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Why? She whispered. Because prophecy says my blood crowns or ruins you? A bleak smile touched his scar. Prophecy has been trying to run my life since I was 14. It's bad at logistics. Despite herself, she smiled back. Then, slowly, she set her hand in his. Heat moved through her. Warm this time, not a burn. His fingers closed gently, rough calluses against her skin. No claiming pressure. No demand. Just held. She lifted her free hand and, after the smallest hesitation, brushed her thumb along the crescent scar at his throat, where he had bared vulnerability before his counsel. His pulse jumped hard beneath it. He did not move away. Thank you, she said, meaning more than the room, the bandages, the defense. For asking. His eyes darkened. Thank you for answering. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed her knuckles once to his forehead, a warrior's vow gesture, intimate and old, and let go before the bond could turn wanting into compulsion. Somewhere below, a bell rang first watch. Reality came back with teeth. They rose together and went down to work. The crisis arrived at moonrise. Vivian was in the scribe room dictating names of Dark Hollow stewards when the outer alarm bell exploded through the keep. Continuous strike, not pattern. Breach or corpse at gate. Boots thundered in corridors. Bastian appeared in the doorway with 3 guards already armed. With me, he said. They ran to the north gatehouse. Rain had started again, fine and icy. Torches flared gold against wet stone. A crowd had formed around something on the drawbridge planks. 2 sentries, a medic, Marrow, and Nessa gripping her cane so hard her knuckles were white. At their feet knelt a horse, sides heaving, foam pink at its mouth. Riderless. No. There had been a rider. The rider's mutilated body was lashed to the saddle in treaty white, arranged as a ritual warning. Dark Hollow courier insignia had been carved into his chest, and 1 hand was missing. A leather tube hung from the pommel, sealed in red wax impressed with Tobias's signet. Vivian stopped dead. The world narrowed to torchlight and blood and the smell of wet iron. Bastian moved in front of her instinctively, but she stepped around him. Open it. Marrow started. You should not. Open. It. Nessa took the tube, broke the seal with her cane tip, and withdrew 3 things. A folded letter, a narrow slate shard etched with lunar script, and a severed braid tied with blue ribbon. Vivian made a sound she had never heard from herself. Ilara's ribbon. She had braided it herself on spring market day, laughing because her little sister said blue made her look like a river spirit. The braid was still damp with blood. Bastian caught Vivienne's shoulders as her knees threatened to fold, holding firm but not trapping. "Breathe," he said near her ear, voice low and urgent. "Vivienne, breathe." She did. Once, twice. Enough to hear Nessa reading, each word like a nail driven in. "Cousin, you always did inspire unnecessary drama. Bring yourself to the border altar valley before moonrise tomorrow, unguarded and unarmed, dressed in treaty white. Come alone, or the rest of your sister follows this braid in pieces. Tell your Starfall mongrel king if he comes within 1 mile. The girl dies first and loudly. Bring your blood. We have a prophecy to complete. Heir Tobias Stoneheart." The slate shard was passed to Marrow. He frowned and translated the etched line with visible effort. "Witnessed blood at altar binds omen to moon." Cade, arriving breathless behind them, went pale. "He has the tablet. Gods." Bastian's hands on Vivienne's shoulders had become iron. "No," he said. "Not to the room. To her. A command. A plea. Both." "You are not going." She turned in his grip, face bloodless, eyes bright with a fury so sharp it looked almost calm. "That is my sister," she said. "We plan, we strike with force." He said unguarded. "He is counting on panic. We do not give him terms." Marrow spoke carefully into the crackling silence. "Majesty, if the girl dies while under Darkhollow custody, Tobias gains martyr leverage. If Vivienne goes and dies, he gains prophecy leverage. Either way he gets a stage," Vivienne finished. Bastian looked at her like he could hold the world shut by will alone. "I will not trade you for bait." Her voice broke, then steadied on steel. "You don't get to decide that alone." Around them, wolves shifted, waiting for orders that would decide whether one girl lived, whether 2 packs burned, whether prophecy became weapon by dawn. Rain hissed on torches. The severed braid lay coiled on wet stone between them like a line no one could uncross. And somewhere beyond the mountains, Tobias waited at the altar with blood law and a stolen omen, daring them to choose wrong. Vivienne stared at the braid until the blue ribbon blurred. Then she picked it up herself, cradling it in both palms as if her sister's hair might still feel pain. "War chamber," she said hoarsely. "Now." Maps were already unrolled when she arrived. Bastian stood at the head of the table with his fists planted in carved river lines, fury held so tight it looked like stillness. Marrow, Nessa, Cade, 3 captains and 2 scouts waited in a ring of torchlight. Vivienne laid Alara's braid beside the border altar mark on the map. "Tobias won't keep her at Darkhollow Keep," she said. "Too many witnesses. He'll stage the exchange where old law can be twisted. Altar Valley, East Ravine Shelf. There's a narrow horse path on the north rim and scree chutes on both sides. Good for hidden archers." Cade frowned. "How do you know that?" "I used to race Tobias there as children. He liked places where cliffs did half the killing." Bastian cut in. "No exchange." "Bastian!" "No." His voice cracked like a command bell. "You do not walk into his blade." Silence dropped hard. Vivienne met his stare. "If I don't, Alara dies. If you do, both of you might." Nessa tapped her cane once. "There is another variable, truth stone." Heads turned. She reached into her cloak and placed a dark pendant on the table. Smooth river black crystal wrapped in silver wire etched with witness runes. "Old tribunal tool," Nessa said. "Record sworn speech if primed with blood and moonlight. Hard to fake. Harder to deny." Vivienne picked it up. Cool at first, then warming in her palm. "Can it carry at distance?" "Enough for a valley if you speak clearly and the gods are bored." Bastian's jaw flexed. "You're discussing this as if it's happening." "It is happening," Vivienne snapped, the leash on her own fear finally breaking. "He stole prophecy text, forged my hand, bought half my house, and took my sister because he knows exactly which nerve to cut. He wants spectacle? Fine. I'll give him one he can't narrate. By being bait. By being witness. Bastian came around the table and stopped a breath away. His eyes were storm dark, voice low enough only she could hear. I can't lose you to prove a point. Something inside her softened at the rawness of that. It did not change the answer. You won't, she said. Because I'm not going to die. I'm going to make him talk. For a long moment he looked like he might forbid it anyway. Lock gates, post guards, carry her to a cellar if that was what it took. Then he exhaled like a man swallowing glass. You stay behind the fortress walls, he said aloud for the room, formal and absolute. That is my order. Vivian held his gaze and heard what sat beneath it. I am trying to keep you breathing. She bowed her head once, the shape of obedience. Then, before dawn, wearing treaty white, with wolfsbane blades stitched into her hem and Nessa's truth stone at her throat, she rode out through a smuggler postern with 2 silent scouts and did exactly what he had forbidden. The altar valley looked like a wound cut through the mountain. Moonlight poured silver over slick stone shelves, black pines, and the old border altar itself. A low slab carved with crescent runes gone blunt with age and blood. Mist crawled in the ravine below. Water somewhere to the west roared from recent rain. Vivian walked the last stretch alone. She had braided her hair in the old treaty style and painted no war marks. Her white dress clung damp at the knees. At her collarbone, the truthstone pendant rested against skin, warmed by her pulse. North Rim, 1 Night Fang scout hidden behind split granite. South Scree, 2 more. Far Ridge out of sight. Bastian waiting with an assembled force and every instinct in his body straining to break cover. She prayed he would hold. Tobias! She called into the valley. I'm here. Laughter echoed first, then torchlight flared along the altar shelf. Dark hollow wolves stepped from shadows in a crescent, blades out, faces she knew and wished she did not. At their center stood Tobias in ritual black, silver embroidery at his cuffs, prophecy tablet on a stand behind him like a priest's scripture. And beside the altar, wrists bound to a standing post, mouth gagged with red cloth, was Alara. Her little sister's eyes found hers and went wide with relief and terror. Vivian's chest seized. She forced breath back in. Do not run. Running gets her killed. Tobias spread his arms. Look at you. Obedient at last. Let her go. So abrupt. No cousinly greeting? You forfeited that when you sent me her hair. He ticked and circled the altar. I sent motivation. You always did need urgency. One of his men yanked Alara's head back by the braid stump. Alara whimpered. Vivian's wolf lunged behind her ribs so hard she tasted blood. Tobias watched, delighted. Ah, there she is. Rage looks better on you than diplomacy. He gestured, and 2 wolves frisked Vivian quickly, finding no visible weapons. They didn't think to check weighted hems. They shoved her to her knees before the altar. Unarmed and unguarded, Tobias said. How touching. Did Starfall whine when you slipped his leash? She lowered her eyes, counting heartbeats, feeling for the truth stone's activation seam with her thumb. 1 drop of blood. Witness wake. She bit the inside of her cheek and pressed bloody fingertip to the pendant's rune groove. It warmed sharply, then went still. Talk while you can, Tobias said, drawing a sacrificial dagger from the altar. Old steel, moon-etched, stolen from Dark Hollow Vault. Vivian raised her head slowly. Before you cut me, answer one thing. He grinned. A confession request? How dramatic. You always wanted an audience. Take it. He paced, preening, unable to resist his own reflection in power. I poisoned Uncle Corvin, he said lightly. There, is that what you wanted? 2 grains each night in mulled wine. The healer signed the fever notice for a parcel of Riverland. Vivian's pulse hammered. Keep him talking. And the letters? Forged in your hand by Scribe Pell. Dead now, poor man. Fell down archive stairs. Marrow had been right about Scribe Joins. She swallowed bile. The tracker horn at Nightfang border? Mine. Paid your escorts triple to lose you in storm. You nearly made it inconveniently far, I'll grant. He came closer, crouching, dagger tip under her chin. I bribed Grayfin with grazing rights, Redclaw with silver, Southmere with fear. I stole the prophecy tablet because old men love omens more than evidence. And tonight, he tapped the blade lightly against her throat. I spill your blood, watch Starfall tear himself apart, and present the valley a mad king and a necessary heir. Me. Around the ravine, hidden in dark, Nightfang scouts heard every word through the Truthstone hum and waited for signal. Vivienne let her mouth tremble deliberately. You think Bastion will come mad with grief? I know males like him. Point them at a corpse and they become stories others survive. He stood, lifted the dagger high for ritual strike. Good, Vivienne said, and smiled. His brow furrowed just as she moved. She kicked off her knees, twisting hard left. Her hem split where she had pre-cut the seam. 2 slim wolfsbane blades dropped into her palms. She drove one through the wrist of the wolf holding Alara's post rope, and the other across Tobias's knife forearm. He cursed, blade skidding off her shoulder instead of her throat. Vivienne shifted mid-motion, bones cracking, teeth lengthening, wolf surging through torn silk and moonlight in a violent half-change born of fury and bond fire. She slammed Tobias in the chest with both shoulders, sent him sprawling across wet altar stone, then threw back her head and howled. The signal ripped across the valley like thunder. Above them, Nightfang scouts rose from rock and pine. Across the ridges, horns answered. Wolves poured into the ravine from both sides. Nightfang black, Darkhollow gray, neighboring pack banners behind them, drawn by the sound and by the promise of truth. Chaos exploded. Arrows hissed. Men shouted. Alara screamed behind her gag as 2 Darkhollow guards tried to drag her toward horses. Vivienne rolled, snatched Tobias's fallen dagger, and hurled it end over end. It buried in one guard's calf. He went down shrieking. A Nightfang scout tackled the second. Tobias scrambled to his feet and bolted across the altar shelf, blood running down his arm. "Killer!" he roared. "Kill them all!" No one moved cleanly anymore. Too many witnesses. Too much uncertainty. Vivienne tore the gag from Alara with shaking hands and cut her wrist bonds. "Vivi!" Alara's voice cracked. He said you were dead. Not tonight." Vivienne shoved her toward the scout. "Take her North Rim. Don't stop." Alara clung for one desperate second, then ran with the scout into cover. Vivienne spun back in time to see Tobias almost at the horse line. She launched after him. He heard her, glanced back, and slipped on rain-slicked stone. She hit him from behind, both of them skidding hard across runes dark with old blood. Tobias clawed for a side knife. She stamped his hand flat and drove her heel down until bones popped. He screamed and tried to bite. Vivienne seized his hair, yanked his head up, and pressed the Truthstone to his throat. "Listen," she hissed. She thumbed the release rune. The stone flared silver. Then Tobias's own voice thundered over the valley, amplified and inarguable. "I poisoned Uncle Corvin. Forged in your hand? I bribed Grayfin. Stole the prophecy tablet. Tonight, I spill your blood." Every head turned. Across the lower ridge, Bastion burst through the last line of pines with Nightfang Command at his back and 3 rival alphas beside him. He took in the tableau. Vivienne over Tobias, Truthstone blazing, confession spilling into moonlight, and stopped dead, stunned pride and fury colliding on his face. Tobias thrashed under her boot. Fake! She faked it! Nessa pushed to the front, cane raised. True stone witness was primed under council rune. I attest validity before moon and pax. Marrow echoed, voice shaking but clear. Attested. Cade, jaw tight, added, attested. The valley erupted. Shouts, curses, demands. Dark Hollow wolves stared at Tobias as if seeing him for the first time. Tobias made one last desperate move, wrenching free enough to crawl toward the horse tether. Vivian tackled him again, drove him onto his back, and put the sacrificial blade at his throat. Bastion stepped forward, murder in every line of him. Vivian lifted one blood-slick hand without looking away from Tobias. No. The single word stopped even Bastion. She rose, dragged Tobias by the collar to the center of the altar, and faced the gathered packs. I invoke blood law, she said, voice carrying raw and iron strong. As wronged heir of House Darkhollow, I challenge Tobias Stoneheart for theft of succession, murder of High Alpha Corvin, false witness, and unlawful blood right. Tobias spat red. You have no standing. She held up the sacrificial dagger. This is Darkhollow Vault steel, stolen from my father's hand. My standing is carved in it. One of Grafen's elders shouted, accepted if challenged. Tobias looked around for rescue and found none. Even his own men were backing away. He laughed suddenly, cracked and ugly. Fine. Fight me then, cousin. They circled on slick stone, moon high and white. Tobias favored his injured hand, but still moved fast, slashing low, then high, trying to force her toward altar edge. Vivian parried with the stolen blade in memory, every dirty trick he had taught and used. He feinted left. She didn't bite. He rushed. She pivoted and hammered her elbow into his throat. He stumbled. She kicked his knee, dropped him to one side, and pinned his knife hand to the altar slab with her boot. Yield, she said. Never. Yield. He lunged with his free hand for her throat. Vivian drove the blade down, hard, through the stone between his spread fingers, close enough to split skin, deep enough to crack altar rock with a ringing strike. Tobias screamed, trapped hand shaking inches from amputation. Yield, she roared. I yield, I yield. The words echoed and died. Vivienne stepped back, chest heaving, and kept her eyes on him as wardens moved in. Tobias, panting blood, looked up with pure hatred. You were supposed to die nameless. She met his stare without blinking. No, cousin, you die witnessed. Marrow, voice formal now, declared before all packs, Tobias Stoneheart is stripped of rank, claim, and name right. Sentenced under blood law to execution at dawn. No one objected. As they dragged him away, he kept screaming prophecy curses until a guard gagged him with his own sash. Bastion reached Vivian then, hands hovering at her shoulders, face pale beneath old scars. Are you hurt? She shook once, sudden tremor breaking through adrenaline. Ask me again in 5 minutes. His mouth did something like a smile, wrecked at the edges. Stubborn mate. Chosen mate, she corrected. His eyes burned. Chosen. Behind them, Ilara ran back down the slope and threw herself into Vivian's arms. Vivian held her sister and did not let go until Ilara's shaking eased, and dawn began to thin the eastern sky. Tobias died at first light on the lower execution stones, sentence witnessed by Nightfang, Darkhollow, Greyfen, Redclaw, and Southmere delegates. He tried for final speeches. No one listened. When it was done, Marrow read the crimes again for record, and Nessa sealed the tablet and Truth Stone transcript under joint crest. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, rumor no longer outran law. By moonrise, Vivian stood once more at the border stones where she had been cast out. The storm had passed. The sky was clear enough to cut on. Pine resin and cold earth scented the air. The stones shone pale under full moon. Bastion approached without guards, coat unfastened, scars visible along jaw and throat like silver script. He stopped one step away. I asked you once to stay behind walls, he said quietly. You disobeyed me, walked into a blood trap, dismantled a coup, and saved your sister. Vivian folded her arms. Are you about to scold me? A breath of a laugh. I am about to learn not to mistake protection for permission. The bond between them thrummed, no longer a raw wire, more like a deep current waiting to be named. His expression sobered. Before we do this, you hear me clearly. Prophecy still exists. My enemies still breathe. Choosing me means choosing danger with teeth. He touched the scar at his throat. And me as I am. Not rumor. Not crown. She stepped closer until their boots nearly touched. Then hear me clearly, Bastion Starfall. I choose with open eyes. His gaze dropped to her mouth, then rose again with visible restraint. May I mark you? Vivian answered by baring the curve where neck met shoulder, tipping her head to offer, pulse loud and steady. Consent. Unmistakable. Mine, he whispered, reverent and rough. Yours, she breathed back. Mate. He cupped the back of her neck, thumb warm under her jaw, giving her one last heartbeat to refuse. She leaned in. His fangs pierced skin at the neck-shoulder junction. Sharp pain first, bright and clean, then a flood of molten heat that punched through her spine and exploded outward. She gasped, fingers clutching his coat, knees threatening to fold as pain transformed into fierce, aching relief. Not possession. Recognition. Every ragged edge inside her that had been scraped raw by betrayal suddenly had somewhere to settle. Through the bond she felt him too. The iron discipline, the old grief at Ashfall, the lonely years spent ruling from shadows, and beneath all of it a wild, almost disbelieving tenderness aimed wholly at her. He released, tongue sweeping once over the wound to seal. The mark burned like a brand kissed by moonlight. Vivienne made a small, wrecked sound, half laugh, half sob, and tugged him down by the collar. Your turn, she said. He stilled, eyes flaring gold. Vivienne, you asked, I answer. She pressed her mouth to the pulse at his throat, right over the scar he had bared to protect her, and bit. His body jerked, breath tearing out as her fangs broke skin. Heat surged the opposite direction now, his power rushing into her like a star tide, hers rising to meet it. Their wolves slammed together in the bond with a crackling snap, orbit locking. Strength braided, his battle-cold strategy, her razor instinct for truth, both threaded with hunger and fierce calm. Mine, she whispered against his skin. Yours, he rasped, hands shaking where they held her waist. Mate. The bond settled with a profound inward click, like a door long jammed finally closing true. The world sharpened and steadied all at once. She could feel where he stood in relation to her without looking, feel his pulse answer hers, feel his restraint and desire and trust as distinct currents that no longer threatened to drown either of them. Forehead to forehead, breath mingling, they spoke together. No chains, no bargains, only choice. Moonlight spilled over the border stones, over old carvings and fresh blood marks, and for the first time that place held no exile in it, only return. They stayed like that for a long time, arms wrapped, hearts slowing in sync, until the burn at their marks softened from fire to warmth and the bond hummed quiet and sure beneath skin. 3 days later, the great hall that had once hosted Vivian's Bride of Peace feast was remade. No chains, no ceremonial collars, no hostage dais. Instead, long tables faced each other as equals, and at the center stood a single treaty stone with 2 blank signature grooves. Banners of Nightfang and Darkhollow hung side by side. Greyfen, Redclaw, and Southmere standards ringed the walls as witness. Alara sat in the front row wrapped in dark blue, alive, braid newly cut to her shoulders. She held Vivienne's hand until called to stand as family witness. Marrow read first, voice formal and clear. Article 7 rescinded. No blood relative may be traded as collateral, bride pledge, or peace hostage between packs. Nessa followed, tapping each clause with her cane. Joint tribunal established at border station, 3-pack minimum review for succession disputes, poisoning claims, and exile warrants. Secret confinements outlawed. Cade stepped forward last with a parchment stack and looked, for once, directly at Vivienne. Forgery of seal and script now carries immediate rank loss pending hearing. Learn that one the expensive way. A ripple of dark laughter moved through the hall. Bastian took up the signing blade, sliced his palm, and pressed blood to stone. By crown and pack, bound. He passed the blade to Vivienne. She met every gaze in the room. Elders, captains, former enemies. The hot-headed beta from before now stripped to plain guard leathers and posted to tribunal watch as penance, and cut her palm. By law and witness, she said, pressing blood beside his, bound. The stone drank both signatures and flashed once, pale silver. Marrow lifted his staff. Let record show Vivienne Darkhollow is recognized under Moon Law as Moon Consort of Nightfang and War Mediator of the Allied Tribunal by merit of invoked law and lives preserved. Bastian leaned toward her, voice meant only for her ear. Rule with me? She squeezed his marked hand. Beside you, never beneath. After signatures, she walked with Alara and Nessa to the border outpost newly cleared of old cages. Carpenters were still hammering beams into place. Children from 2 minor packs chased each other between lumber stacks, while a medic sorted blankets. A weathered sign had been nailed above the gate in fresh paint. Border Sanctuary. No coercion, no claim without consent. A thin young wolf waited there with a travel pack and bruises fading yellow on his jaw. He flinched when uniforms approached. Vivienne knelt to his eye level, keeping her voice gentle and steady. You're safe here. Name if you want it. Silence if you don't. He swallowed. Ren. Welcome, Ren. She glanced back as Bastian joined them, carrying a crate of ration tins himself because apparently kings could lift things. You'll eat first, then sleep. Tribunal hearing tomorrow with witness present. No one touches you without permission. Ren looked between them, uncertain, then nodded slowly. As dusk settled, Bastian and Vivienne stood at the sanctuary gate watching lanterns wink on one by one along the border road. Shared patrol lights now, not hunting beacons. Next storm will come, he said. Vivienne slipped her fingers through his. The marks at their throats pulsed warm in answer. Let it, she said. We meet it together. He bared his teeth in a grin that looked almost like peace. Teeth first? Always. Chosen mates, chosen law, no chains. And when the wind rose over the stones, it carried no exile at all.